Salvage Hunters isn't just a show about the discovery of dust-covered relics lost to time and turning them to prized possession. It is a story about connecting the past to the present and preserving it for the future. It is a story of patience, passion, a sharp eye for details, and incredible skills. This is where the star of the show stands out. He is the link between the past, present, and future, and embodies the skills and other qualities that make the show amazing. Unfortunately, darkness has enveloped the bright star of this antique expert. What if I told you there's a side to Drew's story that doesn't make it to the bright lights of television? A side filled not with antiques, but with heartbreak, personal struggles, and lessons that hit harder than any bargain gone wrong. So grab a seat and settle in, and let's peel back the layers of Drew Pritchard's life to uncover the story behind the man. For years, Drew has been the face of Salvage Hunters. He is a real-life Indiana Jones, a modern-day treasure hunter with a knack for spotting gold where others see rust. But where did it all begin? What shaped this man's passion for breathing life back into the forgotten? To find out, we will begin at the quaint town of Conwy, North Wales, where Drew grew up, surrounded by stories of the past. While most kids were busy playing football or soccer, going to the park, or reading comic books, Drew had his nose buried in old junkyards, finding fascination in things others had tossed aside. He wasn't your typical boy. He loved tinkering with things, fixing an old bike here, repurposing a piece of scrap metal there. He also had a knack for asking questions. His inquisitive nature, fueled by his curiosity, became the seeds of his lifelong love for history and craftsmanship. Now, let's fast forward a bit. Back in the late 1980s, he landed a job working for a local stained glass conservator. That's where he honed his eye for detail and learned the importance of craftsmanship. For Drew, it wasn't just about fixing glass. It was about preserving stories. Here's where Drew's story takes an interesting turn. Most people might have stayed comfortable in one trade, sticking to stained glass, restoration, for example, but not Drew. He had bigger plans, dreams that went beyond restoring church windows and antique glass work. While working in the stained glass world in the late 1980s, Drew had the chance to meet some of the most experienced antique dealers in North Wales. It was a community full of colourful characters, people who could walk into a dusty barn and walk out with treasures no one else noticed. These seasoned pros saw something in Drew. They saw that he wasn't just another guy with a toolbox. He had an eye for detail, a love for history, and most importantly, a hunger to learn. One of the pivotal figures in Drew's early career was a local antiques dealer named Clive. Clive was well known in the North Wales circuit for his uncanny ability to turn even the most mundane finds into sought-after pieces. He became a kind of unofficial mentor to Drew. Clive took him to his first major antique fair in 1990, held in Newark, Nottinghamshire, a mecca for antique lovers. Drew later described that experience as a turning point. "It was like a playground for me," he'd say. "Everywhere I looked, there was something incredible to learn or discover." At Newark, Drew didn't just observe, he participated. He started small, buying affordable pieces, an old weather vane here, a rustic table there, and flipping them for a profit. Clive taught him the ropes. He taught Drew how to negotiate, spot authentic merchandise in a market flooded with reproductions, and most importantly, how to see potential where others saw junk. Then there was another important connection, a flamboyant dealer named Gerald. Gerald specialized in large architectural salvage. Grand fireplaces, cast iron gates, and stone ornaments from stately homes were what Gerald's expertise. Drew was fascinated by the sheer scale of Gerald's work. Through Gerald, Drew got his first big break into architectural salvage. Around 1992, Gerald invited him to join a project dismantling and selling parts of a Victorian greenhouse from a country estate. Drew threw himself into the job, learning not just the trade, but also the stories behind these pieces, stories he'd later use to captivate buyers. These relationships expanded Drew's understanding of the antique world. They also opened doors to new opportunities. By the mid-1990s, Drew wasn't just the stained glass guy. He was building a reputation as a versatile dealer who could handle everything from small decorative pieces to massive architectural salvages. Looking back, Drew often credits those early mentors for shaping his career. Without people like Clive and Gerald, I wouldn't have had the courage to take risks or the knowledge to spot the diamonds in the rough, he once said in an interview. Despite the help he got, Drew learned that every journey has its challenges. Stay tuned for the highs, the lows, and the unexpected twists. By the late 2000s, Drew had already made a name for himself in the world of antiques and salvaging. His knack for spotting hidden gems was unmatched, and his reputation for fair deals and storytelling made him an approachable expert in the industry. Around 2010, he caught the attention of a TV production company. They weren't just looking for an antique dealer, they wanted a personality, someone who could bring the world of salvage to life for viewers. Drew had the charm, the passion, and made things interesting. Perfect for television, right? But here's the thing. Drew wasn't your typical TV star material. He wasn't polished or scripted. He was raw, unfiltered, and completely himself. This wasn't the kind of polished persona fit for TV. Still, in 2011, the producers pitched an idea to Drew, a show that would follow him as he traveled around the UK hunting for antiques. The concept was simple. Interested viewers would get a behind-the-scenes look at the world of salvaging. They'll see Drew go from dusty barns to grand estates and how he turned forgotten relics into treasures. At first, Drew wasn't sure, but with a little persuasion, he decided to give it a go. That decision turned him to the legend that he is. The first episode of Salvage Hunters aired on Quest in November 2011, and it was a hit. Drew's personality shone through. His enthusiasm for every find, his dry humor, and the way he could see the beauty in battered items made people have a fresh perspective to things. Drew made the show not just about antiques, but about the stories those antiques carried. One of the things that made Salvage Hunters so special was how relatable it felt. It turned out that Drew's raw and unfiltered nature did the trick. Viewers saw him as one of them and liked that he wasn't pretending to be perfect. If a deal went wrong, he showed it. If he found a piece he loved, viewers could see the genuine excitement on his face. And let's not forget his iconic banter with his team, especially his driver and sidekick, John T. The chemistry between them added so much charm to the show. Let's face it, while Drew Pritchard's sharp eye and quick wit are the backbone of Salvage Hunters, the show wouldn't be the same without his team. They're the ones who bring extra personality, humor, and camaraderie to every episode. Honestly, could you imagine Drew traveling solo without his trusted crew to share the laughs, banter, and occasional eye rolls? Not a chance. First up, we've got John T., better known to fans as T. T wasn't just Drew's driver, he was his partner in crime, his sounding board, and sometimes the voice of reason when Drew got a bit carried away. With his laid-back demeanor and dry humor, T was the perfect foil to Drew's boundless enthusiasm. Remember the times Drew would get overly excited about something like a rusty weather vane? T would give him that classic side-eye and say, "Really, Drew? This is what's getting you hyped today?" But here's the thing. Beneath the playful ribbing, T had a deep respect for Drew's vision. One of T's standout qualities was his knack for reading people. While Drew was focused on the antiques, T often picked up on the mood of the seller or the atmosphere of the deal. That dynamic worked like magic. Drew handled the charm, and T provided the grounding. Then there's Gavin, the restoration expert. If Drew was the visionary, Gavin was the magician who made that vision come to life. Gavin had this incredible ability to take something battered and broken and transform it into a masterpiece. He was meticulous, patient, and completely in love with his craft. Watching him work was like seeing an artist in action, and Drew knew it. He trusted Gavin's skills completely. One of the most memorable moments involving Gavin was when Drew brought back a dilapidated 19th century French mirror. Drew was thrilled, but honestly, the thing looked like it had survived a hurricane. Gavin didn't even flinch. He got to work, restoring the mirror to its former glory. When Drew saw the finished piece, his face lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. That's the magic Gavin brought to the team, turning Drew's finds into show-stopping treasures. And let's not forget Rebecca Pritchard, Drew's ex-wife and the show's resident research and valuation expert. Rebecca's role was crucial. She was the one who dove into the history of the pieces Drew brought back. Her insights added depth to the show, giving viewers a glimpse into the stories behind the antiques. While Drew was out in the field making deals, Rebecca was the one who confirmed whether those deals were as good as Drew hoped they'd be. What made the dynamic between Drew and Rebecca so interesting was their chemistry. It helped that the two of them were married couples. But here's the thing, when you're on TV, life changes, and it does very fast. Fame isn't all glamour. While Drew thrived professionally, his personal life faced its fair share of challenges. Being a public figure meant scrutiny, and Drew, being Drew, didn't exactly have a low-key personality. His straightforward nature, which endeared him to fans, sometimes ruffled feathers in the industry. Then there's the impact of fame on relationships. Drew and Rebecca had already parted ways before the show, but working together under the public eye wasn't always easy. They made it work for the sake of the show and their shared passion for antiques, but it wasn't without its hurdles. Drew himself admitted in interviews that balancing fame, work, and personal life was one of the biggest challenges he faced. Drew continued to juggle being a TV star, running a growing business, traveling constantly, and maintaining some semblance of a personal life. It was exhausting, but Drew's love for antiques never wavered. However, by the mid-2010s, Drew was not just dealing with the pressures of his career, but also navigating a well-documented separation from Rebecca, his wife of many years and Salvage Hunters co-star. Breakups are hard enough, but when the world is watching, that's a whole different level of stress. Drew and Rebecca had built so much together, not just a life, but a thriving business and a beloved show. The separation, finalized around 2017, wasn't just a personal loss. It was also a professional challenge. They continued to work together, showing remarkable professionalism and mutual respect on screen. But you could imagine the toll it took behind the scenes. Drew once admitted in an interview that maintaining that balance was one of the hardest things he's ever done. And it wasn't just about the relationship. Drew had to plan being a single dad while running a business that was expanding rapidly thanks to the show's success. Imagine flying across the UK and Europe, filming episodes, managing a workshop, and still trying to be present for your family. It's the kind of chaos that could drain even the most energetic person. Let's be honest, no matter how talented or driven you are, you can't do it all alone. Drew Pritchard's success wasn't just about his sharp eye for antiques, it was also about the people who stood by him. That's why losing key collaborators like John T. hit him hard. It wasn't some dramatic fallout sometimes. Life just takes you in a different direction. Still, his departure left a noticeable gap. Drew had to adjust to working without the guy who'd been by his side for so many of his biggest finds. And viewers noticed too. Losing T was more than just a personal loss. It was a professional challenge. The show had to evolve, and so did Drew's team. Finding that same chemistry with someone new wasn't easy, especially when fans have come to love a dynamic duo. But Drew pressed on, proving that while change is hard, it's also an opportunity to grow. Now let's talk about another challenge, the antique community. You'd think a show like Salvage Hunters would be universally celebrated, right? Not quite. While Drew gained a massive fan base, his success also brought criticism from some corners of the industry. There were whispers. Some dealers claimed Drew's fame gave him an unfair advantage, while others didn't love his blunt style of negotiation. And then there were the controversies. Drew's candid nature didn't always sit well with everyone, and there were times when his words or actions sparked debates. In 2018, Drew faced backlash for comments he made about certain restoration practices. While his intention was to champion authenticity and respect for craftsmanship, some saw his remarks as dismissive. It's a tricky line to walk, being both a TV personality and a respected industry expert. But here's what sets Drew apart. He never shied away from criticism. He took it in stride, sometimes defending his choices, other times admitting when he could have handled things differently. It's part of what makes him so relatable. He is still a pioneer in the salvage industry, couldn't be denied. His approach to antiques, seeing beauty in imperfection, respecting craftsmanship, and preserving history, became a movement. He inspired a new generation of antique lovers who no longer saw old items as junk, but as treasures with stories worth saving. However, what Drew treasures most were relationships, and he lost people around him. The loss that hit him the most is what we'll show you next. In 2020, Drew faced a loss that would devastate anyone: the death of his beloved father, Pritchard. Drew's relationship with his dad had always been close, and this loss hit him hard. Pritchard wasn't just a father, he was a mentor and a guiding force in Drew's life. He was the one who first sparked Drew's interest in the world of antiques. His passing, particularly after the difficult separation from Rebecca and the challenges that came with fame, was a crushing blow. Imagine, after years of building your life and career, finally finding success and recognition, only to have the most important person in your life taken away. Drew was suddenly forced to reckon with the fragility of life. Everything he thought he knew about the world, about his own strength, seemed to come crashing down. But here's the thing. Through his grief, Drew found a new level of appreciation for the things that truly mattered. Losing his father changed his outlook on what success meant. It wasn't about the next deal or the next find. It was about cherishing the people who matter most, the relationships that ground you, and the moments that truly shape your legacy. For Drew, the most painful part wasn't just losing his dad, it was the realization that time was precious. It's something many of us don't really think about until we experience loss. But Drew began to see his life in a whole new light. The relentless hustle that had once fueled his career now felt less important. He began to focus more on what made him truly happy: his family, his work, and the legacy of those who came before him. Drew's journey through grief wasn't easy, and it's something he's been open about. In interviews, he's spoken about how difficult it was to keep going after such a monumental loss. But he did keep going, and through it, he found a way to honor his father's memory by continuing to do what he loved, finding treasures and preserving history, just as Pritchard had inspired him to do in the first place. That loss changed Drew, not just as a person, but as a professional. It was a defining moment that gave him a deeper sense of purpose, and ultimately, it made his story even more powerful. Through tragedy, Drew found the strength to keep pushing forward, and that's something that's deeply inspiring.